How I buy my first investment property even though I was broke and on a basic salary. If you'd like to know how to buy your first investment property even though you're broke and on a basic pay, this video is for you. Hey guys, it's Rahim. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, smash the subscribe button because I talk about property investment, personal development, and how to gain financial freedom. For those who don't know me, I started my property investment journey just over 8 years ago. I was in a job where I was undervalued, underappreciated, going nowhere. I took a leap of faith to start my investment journey by renting properties from landlord and subsequently rent those properties out. The money I made from those properties, I was then able to buy my own investment properties. I then duplicate that. I was able to build that to a multi-million-pound property investment. From there on, I've set up my estate agency, my renovation company, and I help professionals use my tried and tested method to make recurring income through investment properties. In this video, I'm going to share with you a simple step-by-step on how I was able to buy my first investment property, which now becomes to a multi-million-pound property investment portfolio. You see, when I started my property investment journey, I was like any other ordinary person out there. I was less in funds. I didn't have lots of money, working serious long hours. I never even had time to think about what I want to do in life. But I decided to take the leap of faith to start my investment journey. And one of the obstacles I had was money. Money was a massive problem for me because only people I've talked about properties have told me I need 50, 60, 70. Some people even asking me that I need £200,000 to start my property investment journey. And I did not have that money. I did not have a clue even how to raise that money. I did a little calculations. I realized in order for me to raise £50,000, that would have taken me about maybe 10 to 15 or maybe even 20 years to raise that £50,000. So obviously you have to think outside of the box and look what other people are doing and see if I'm able to mirror that and make that better to get me to where I wanted to be. So that's what I'm going to share with you in this video. It would blow your mind away. If you want to learn exactly how this strategy is done, I'd advise you to watch the video until the end because that's the only way you can get benefits of it. So obviously I didn't have lots of money. I was broke at the time. So what I decided to do is to kind of learn what other peoples were doing around certain strategies. So the first strategies that came to mind was a rent-to-rent strategy, and that rent-to-rent strategy is the process by which you can rent a property out and you subsequently rent that property in a room-by-room basis. So that strategy sounds appealing to me because I do not need to have 25% deposit. I don't need half the money to renovate the property, and I do not need to have proper credit score also to start buying my investment properties. But I knew then if I do that, I might struggle to actually keep that going. So what I did basically is to set my goals. I knew I wanted to have my own investment properties. I knew I wanted to buy my own properties. So I knew I wanted to buy a property at least that was below £100,000. And I knew I needed about maybe £50,000 to get me to buy my first investment property. So I'm walking backwards here. And I knew there's a rent-to-rent strategy going. And I'm also renting where I was living. So what I did basically to think outside of the box is how to raise that £50,000 in order to allow me to start buying my own investment properties. It was all good if I can rent a property, subsequently rent it out room by room basis. It was always good, but I wanted to live rent-free, bill-free. So the little money I was making from work, I could also save towards my investment goals. So here's what I did. I went to the market looking for properties that are out there to rent. I was looking for a minimum of 5-bedroom house. Okay, I wanted a 5-bedroom house. The reason why I wanted a 5-bedroom house alone is because I could use my initiative to rent the other bedrooms. So that way I will be able to live kind of rent-free and not being worried to pay rent or bills. So I went out there looking for properties, and this happens to be in Cardiff. It's a very nice, amazing city. I loved it. So I kept looking, and then I was able to bump into a 5-bedroom house. So that 5-bedroom house, I rented it from the landlord for £1,400. So now let's jump onto the computer. I can walk you through the exact steps I took to make money from that properties and how I was able to multiply that until I have enough money to buy my investment property. Let's get to it. Okay, so obviously it's a 5-bedroom house. It's in a very good location, not far from city center, and everything around it is walking distance. So obviously I went to the landlord, spoke to the landlord, negotiated with the landlord, and then I rented that property for £1,400. And that was a rent I promised to pay the landlord every single month. Whether I live in the property or not, I promised to pay that. And again, that some people may be thinking that is a risky thing to do. Yes, it was a risky thing to do, but hey, if you don't take risk, you do not actually get benefit. So my intention of taking that property is to live in one of the bedrooms and subsequently rent out the other bedrooms. So I took the property. Obviously I told the landlord what I intended. I said, look, I want to take on the property, rent guaranteed every single month. I'll be living there myself, managing the property. I may get friends and family members to be living with me as well. They'll be paying me the rent, which would allow me to pay you as well. So landlord was happy with that. He said, as long as I'm paying his rent every single month, looking after his property, not paying management fees and repairs, he's happy to carry on with that. So, okay, fantastic. So what I then do, I rented that property out. Obviously I moved in one of the bedrooms. So it was a 5-bedroom house. So in Cardiff at the time, right now, renting a property in Cardiff would be about £575. So because I've moved into one of the bedrooms, I can only rent 4 of the bedrooms. So looking at the figures, when I rent 4 of the bedrooms, I at £575. That gives me £2,300 gross rental income. That's the amount of money I made from renting the property out. So obviously I need to pay my landlord £1,400, and then obviously we've got bills to pay. Obviously you got electricity, gas, fiber optic, internet, council tax and all that sort of thing to pay. So that then obviously was £450. So £450. So in essence, I rented the property for £2,300 and then subsequently paid my landlord every single month the £1,400. That then leaves me, after I've paid my landlord the £1,400, obviously I've got my bills to pay, which is £450. So taking all those expenses out, that then gives me £450 per month profit in that property. So here's the beauty of doing that. I moved into the property, living in the property with my tenant. The beauty of doing that is I'm living rent-free, bill-free. And at the time I was earning about £1,800 every single month. But I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. So what I then did basically, now I'm making £450 every single month, and I've done that for about a month. The second thing I did is to speak to my landlord. I asked my landlord to come round and visit the property, see how I've been looking after the property. So he came round, he saw the property. He saw the property is looking nice, looking even better than the way it was. And then what I then asked him to do, I said, look, could you do me a favor? If you know anybody in your inner circle, would you recommend that person to me in order for me to take on their property on a guaranteed rent basis as well? I will look after the property the way I'm looking after this property. So guess what happened immediately? Immediately after I said that to the landlord said, look, I have another property. If you're interested, I will hand it over to you. So obviously, and again, it was a 5-bedroom house in a place somewhere called Cathays. It's a place in Cardiff called Cathays. So I went to Cathays, I saw the property was a 4-bedroom house. Because where that property was is a slightly expensive area. Okay, so what I did basically, I negotiated with the landlord again, but because that property is a demanding area, the landlord agreed for me to pay him £1,700 for that property. I agreed the price, and then I went again with that property. Now I'm not renting 4 bedrooms anymore, I'm renting 5 bedrooms because I'm not living in that property now. The first one was the one I'm living in, and I'm still living in that property. Okay, so what I did then basically, as we now know, is 575 times 5 bedrooms. That then gives me £2,874 gross rental income. So obviously I'm paying the landlord £1,700, and then with the bill also was £450. £450. So looking at the expenses of £1,700 and £450, I minus that from my gross rental income. So that property generates me £725 every single month. So that then means I've got one property I'm living in that I'm making £450 on, and I have another one that the landlord gave me for £720. So in essence, I'm making £720, okay, in that property, and I'm also making £450. So if you put those two amounts together, you're talking about, I was making about £1,175 every single month from those properties. I did exactly the same thing. I came around, did the property really, really nice, rented it out to tenant, and then obviously once I've rented the property out, and then ask the same landlord again. So look, we've done this now. Do you know anybody else who's got a property that I can take on? Then obviously he referred me then to a family friend, right? Family friend had a property along that road, and that was happy for me to take on that property as well. I take on the properties, exactly same agreement, and then I was able to close that property, and I was able to get two of these properties. So looking at that now, two of those properties, so I've got about another £725 coming into my coffers. That then gives me two rent-to-rent HMO deals plus the one that I'm living in. So I've got three properties on a rent-to-rent basis. So obviously I stayed in that house. I did not move out. I did not go anywhere. I stayed in the other house where I'm sharing with my tenant. So what I then worked into my head, how much would I be able to make end of the year if I was to have those properties? So I looked at the first one, obviously 450 times 12, that then gives me 5,400, and then I'm making £725 here, and then times 12, you're talking about 8,700 per property. But because now I have two properties, and then the landlord referred me to another person, that then gets me to having three properties. So in total, I have four rent-to-rent properties. One I'm living in, and the three is the ones that I'm renting out without being in the properties. So now that then gives me a total annual income of 26,100, okay, for the three properties, okay? So that's what I was making, okay? That's just on the properties I have for now. And bearing in mind, I was also working at the same time as well. At that time, I was on £1,800 a month. So £1,800, obviously I have an expense of about £300. So what is that £300? That £300 is the food I buy, my clothing, you know, all the other stuff that keeps me going, not bills and rent. Basically, I was only taking £300 from my salary. So what I was doing at that point, I was literally saving £1,500 every single month as well. So here's the thing to note here. I did not go increase my expenditure. I did not go move into a flat or to an apartment or to rent myself a house. I stayed exactly in the same place. Okay, it reduces my expenses significantly whilst I'm living rent-free. So that then gives me £1,500 to save every single month. And then obviously if you times that by 12, that then gives me £18,000 a year. So this is how much I would have made if I saved that £1,500 every single month. So if you add that up together, if you add the 5,400 from the property I'm living, plus the three HMO properties I secured from the landlord and his family and friends, plus my salary of £1,500 a month, a year is £18,000. That then gives me an estimated net income of £49,500 every single month. That then means I was making £4,125 every single month. So what I then did, basically, I did not want to wait until month 12 to get that 49,500 to go and start buying my houses. For me, that was way too long to wait. So for me then, what I then did is to wait for 6 months, okay? With the 6 months, I was able to save £24,750. Again, that gets me slightly closer to the amount I need to buy a £100,000 property. But my mission was to buy a property that I can do up slightly, so I can force the value slightly, and I can rent the property a bit more higher amount as well. That then gets me to start thinking again on how to raise funds. I said, okay, fine. Now I will be having 24,750 in 6 months' time. I start thinking about how do I raise funds to get me going. So the first people I tap into is family. Okay, it's family. So I looked into family, spoke to my family members. I had my baby sister. Okay, my baby sister, I approached her. She borrowed me £5,000. So she borrowed me the £5,000. So that then gives me £5,000 on top of what I was making. Okay, I hope this is making sense. Okay, again, if any of these are making sense, comment on the comment section below. If it's not making sense, you want me to clarify anything, comment on the section below. Okay, so that then gives me £5,000. Then obviously I approached a friend that I know, and that I told that friend, look, bro, I'm into this thing. I need £5,000. Would you be able to borrow me £5,000? I will pay you back. Obviously, I've got my rent going. I can pay you back in about 12 months or so. That friend was happy to lend me the money, and then he borrowed me £5,000. Okay, so that then takes me to £10,000. So the next thing I did, again, before you do what I'm about to share with you now, you need to ensure you have the right advice, right legal advice, or right financial advice before you do it. But for me, what I then did is to look at credit cards. I said, okay, now I've got £10,000. Would I be able to get a credit card? Because now my income is huge, obviously. So what I then did, I went online and looked for credit cards, right? Obviously now my income, literally I had zero expense apart from the £300. So I put my income, which was 4,125. They asked me what all my expenses were. I said £300, okay? So basically they were able to lend me £10,000 on credit cards. So I had £10,000 on credit card. So that then gives me a total income of £20,000. So I now know in month 6 I will have total amount of this amount and the £20,000. I know in month 6 I would have £44,000. Just a shy, about £6,000 shy of getting my £50,000. But I knew I would go in the market to look for something suitable for me. So here's what I start doing next. In month 5, I started looking for properties. So I went to a place that you would all know called Rightmove. So I went to Rightmove, and then I start thinking, oh, where do I start investing? Where do I go and buy properties for cheaper prices that I'll be able to rent also in a good rental rate? So Newcastle came to mind. So I went to Newcastle like this. Let's now look what properties are like in Newcastle. So back then I look here, I went to Newcastle. I hope this still works, okay? So basically what then you do, you go here. I then did 3 bedrooms, and I was looking for properties between this range here, okay, from 50 to £100,000, and I needed houses. Okay, I click find. So when I click find, I start looking for properties. So what I did basically is to scroll down here. I wanted properties that I can add value to, properties that I can do up and make a bit of money from. So went down there, went down there, look at that. So supposing you are the one who's doing this right now, this is what you're gonna do basically. So I saw this property here. Okay, I saw a property here, this one here. And then I went on and I saw this property here. This property, guide price of £75,000. So you can see here, this property requires a bit of work. I said, fantastic. Okay, because the property obviously is an auction property by the look of it. Okay, what you then want to do basically is to come here, right? You know when it is, right? You got this here. You're gonna spend £75,000 here as a guide price. So what you then do basically, I went in, as it was this property, I went and said, okay, now if that property guide price is £75,000, okay, if you are going to buy this property, obviously you're not going to buy it at £75,000. You're going to buy it slightly higher than that, right? You might want to buy it at perhaps 15 or 20% over guide. So what you now want to do, you do here, it would be, let's say about 15% over guide. Okay, that then gets us to £86,000. So £86,000 obviously is what that property would go for if you were to buy it at that price. So at that point, I will need to put a deposit of 25%, which is 25% of the $86,250. And then obviously we have our legal fees and all that sort of thing going here. Okay, we have all that going here. So out of our £24,000 we saved for the 6 months, obviously then we would have about 3,750 for our legal transactions, stamp duty and all that sort of thing there. And then obviously we can go for renovation of £20,000. And here's what I did, right? Here is what I did. The renovation cost, okay, I literally become frugal on that renovation cost. I get the labor cost, agree on the labor cost. What I then did, I went in looking for bargain materials to get my property going. So obviously I was able to renovate that property slightly over the amount I have here. You may be thinking, how did I add to get that £45,000? So remember, I've already got 4 properties renting. So one of the month money would be enough to be able to pay whatever the differences are. Okay, so obviously then renovated the property, did it really nice, and then obviously rented that property out. So if you were to rent that property out now, right, the same property, if we go back here, yeah, if we go back here, suppose then we go back to Rightmove, okay, I went back to Rightmove, and then this time round, we're gonna look for properties that we're renting out, okay, so our property is a 3-bedroom house, okay, it's a house, we wanna do maximum of 3-bedroom, and then we're gonna go and work out and see how much we may be able to rent it out. So we've got one there for 920, but that's just a flagged one. We got wood there 1,250, 920, 1,250, 975, 1,500, and so on. So we now know we are able to rent our property for a minimum of £1,000 because it's between 920 to 1,250. So at that point, then you can go then and say, okay, now my rental income is. Let's go back down here. Our rental income is £1,000. So that then gives us £1,000 every single month. So when we did that property up, because we forced the value on that property, we painted and decorated it from the condition it was, that property is likely to come back at £125,000. So £125,000, the bank will lend you 75% of that amount, assuming that we have an interest rate of 4% per annum. Okay, that then would give us, you divide that by 12, that then will give us our monthly interest. So our monthly interest is £313. So we have here £333 interest payment that we pay every single month. And then obviously we have our expenses. Management fees about £100 because that's 10%. Let's just put £200 there. Okay, that then gives us £513 expenses every single month, and then that property then generates us £488, and that will give us a net profit of £5,850. In essence, these are the steps I took. I showed you this in a real life example so you can see where you can go, but this is exactly what I did back then to get my first property. Okay, that's what I did to get my first, but I've just given you the concept of how this could happen in order for you to go and implement it, see if that works for you. So looking at it now, okay, the total income I made by the end of the year, right, taking everything into consideration, is an additional 24,000 because obviously 24,000 went to buying that property, okay, and a month 12. If I'd rent that property again a year, I would have made, the next year, I would have made £30,600. £600. But at month 12, the actual money I would have made at month 12 would have been the 6th month remaining plus my monthly net profit I would have made from this property, which was £488. So in essence, at month 12, I've got myself £25,000. And what I did, I continue increasing my rent-to-rent portfolio, and then I go again, start doing 2 properties instead of 1 property. Is this making sense? Congratulations for watching this video until the end. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are one of those people that watch something until the end, so the benefit of that is this. So don't be the same as the person that's only watched this video for 30 seconds. You go out there, try to implement what I've shared with you. It's not gonna be easy, but believe me or not, if you implement what I've shared with you here, stay the course, get someone to mentor you, guide you, or jump on one of my programs to learn how to do things like this, it could only expedite the process. And if you're interested to learn how to implement this in real life, there's a link on the description below. Click on that link to book one of my specialists to learn how we may be able to work together. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video has been helpful. If this video has been helpful, smash the like button below, subscribe to my channel for more amazing videos. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.